What I always like to use is that I did not grow up on Star Wars. So I didn't see any of the movies. The first movie I saw was The Phantom Menace. Then I saw Star Wars, or New Hope, or whatever it's called. Then I saw Return of the Jedi, and then I saw Empire for the first time last year at 42.
Hopefully you took one look at it and you were like, there's no Mr. Spock in this, I'm out.
Done. So one of the things as somebody who came late to Star Wars, who didn't really have the cultural reference, is I really like Metachlorians. So I think that they're really, really cool because and I really like them, and I don't understand why people really hate those films. Like, they hate those prequels so much. And anytime you talk to somebody about Star Wars, the first 3 movies, they're like, oh my God, Metachlorians, this is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, let's take it down a notch. I get it that it's not your thing, but this is the creator who created your stuff, and everyone's just, Lucas is out of ideas, blah, blah, blah. And I always like Metachlorians because I think that they represent the Jedi's dogma, because they believed in this thing so much that it drove them to really follow a false prophecy that really led to their eventual downfall and takeover by the Sith. And so I was like, oh, the Metachlorians, it's kind of like those weird people who get kind of cult-like, you know, and really drive your religious order into some sort of weird danger zone. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. It's a really nice way to subvert like the standard trope and explain why Jedis are kind of weird. And not very many, but I tell people it's Star Wars and they're like, oh, rah, 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 rah. And they have this very entrenched way because they grew up with it, and they have these memories of watching Star Trek when they're Star Wars when they're young. I know I did it.
Right, you were right.
Star Wars when they're young, and you know, I think it's really interesting to see how betrayed they feel when talking about those movies, or even Force Awakens and Rogue One, and was there a new one that came out this year?
Not yet. Last Jedi's coming.
And then, you know, when they talk about these movies, the betrayal they feel when the new movies don't match the rubric or the schema they've set for themselves. And I always find that fascinating. I find it really interesting. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but I always find it really interesting. Everybody goes off on George Lucas, who created these movies, who wants to make some new edits and release a new version. And they're like, no, don't change it. Han shot first or whatever. And I'm like, it's his stuff. Let him do it. And people talk about how they own Star Wars now, how fandom now owns Star Wars. And I think, well, no, I think it's Disney that owns Star Wars. Pretty sure they make the call.
Well, I mean, like, I think part of an important thing to talk about when you talk
Wait, you're
about
pro-Metachlorian?
No, I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care about your Star Wars. Star Trek is a franchise that avoids wars.
Wait a second. You're allowed to not care about someone else's opinion?
It's weird, right? It's really strange.
I got to leave my Facebook.
No, I think you have to talk about cognitive dissonance in fandom, which is that there's this incredibly important displacement that happens, right? Which is you're a young kid, you can't find an identity in the world, you step on the bridge of the Enterprise narratively, and you're like, this is my place, this is my home, these people represent my values. And then that thing comes to displace your insecurities about the world that you live in. And
You do a lot of behavioral modeling too. So you look at these characters and their relationships, and especially when you're younger, you aspire to be ideally one of the characters in there. So you take on the traits of whether it's Spock or Kirk or Bones or Princess Leia or whatever, because they become your models, your aspirations.
I'm sorry. Princess
Yeoman.
Oh, Yeoman Rand. No, and ideally, you're 100% right. And ideally, done right, that is a cocoon. I spent all of my teenage years asking myself, what would Peter Parker do?
Is he on the bridge?
He's a scientist.
Oh, yeah.
So no, but they are a moral voice that you then build your own identity and voice as a part of, and hopefully you leave that thing behind. But if you're still caught in that cocoon phase, and then the franchise does something that contradicts your value system or the reason that you believe in it, it can create this cognitive dissonance, this fracturing, where all of a sudden, I was believing that Star Trek made me better because I wasn't able to make myself better, and Star Trek, caught me for a loop and hit me with the rope-a-dope, and now I think Star Trek sucks, and it's essentially like you're saying, I suck, you know? And that's why you have this violent emotional reaction to it.
Yeah, and I definitely see that, especially in like, but it's okay to outgrow fandom too. So like I grew up in 1990-ish, and my favorite comic book of all time, my favorite comic book series is The New Warriors, which came out in the 90s. And the big thing was Heroes for the 90s, and all the characters were characters I loved. If they weren't men that I aspired to be, there was women that I aspired to date, like Firestar, Namorita, or whatever. And I always like looked at their values and their stories as something that really forged what I believed about, like sticking up for the little person, social justice, fighting things like racism and inequality, and really working towards environmentalism, and all these things that I was like, oh yeah, I really love this, and it was really powerful. And then eventually, you know, the Marvel would reboot the series, and it wouldn't be the cast that I remembered, and I was just like, you know what, I've grown out of this, and that's okay, because I've sort of become the person that they helped me become, and I don't need to go back and cherish this fandom. I can just move beyond it. I was a fan. I still revere those stories, but I can find something else to glom onto if I really need something.
It is weird though that every time Marvel makes a change, they kick in your door and burn all your old copies of those stories.
No, it's weird. Really? I wish they'd clean up after stuff. All that ash. I don't even know how many reboots of Deadpool I had.
The Axel Alonso Gustavo.
The thing that, and I want to open this up to the people in the room too, because I don't want this just to be like, you know,
three white guys.
There's nothing we can do about this being three white guys, but you know, our opinions are not more valid than anybody else's in the room in terms of what we like. But just up here. But the thing I was going to say too is that, like we were talking about with New Warriors, or you know, I'm sure people went through it in some ways with like, you know, oh, there's a new James Bond. This, you know, this Roger Moore guy seems like a jerk or whatever. You know, like I'm sure there were those reactions too. But aside from the idea that back then you basically could tell your friends who were all geographically near you and you would move on from it, nothing ends now. Between social media that amplifies everything, giant companies owning the stuff, and you know, there will be a new Star Wars movie every year until people really, really, really stop going to them. Like the franchise is just constant, and you can own all of them, and you can stream all of them. So there's a constant reinforcement. Nothing gets to be like, oh yeah, I sort of remember that I like that Spider-Man comic better than the new ones. Now it's like, I turn on my phone and I can read that one. It's like, yeah, that one makes me feel like I did when I was 14. That's way better than this one that makes me feel like I'm 48, because being 48 has aching and bills. But
yes.
Wait, I'm sorry, that got very personal. Being 48 is fine.
No, that's true.
That's a big part.
John Byrne disease is the #1 thing I think every comics creator and fan has to fight, is just the feeling of like, why can't comics make me feel the way I did when I was young?
Damn you, John Byrne.
So should I not have been naming names? I apologize.
No, it's fine.
He has a forum online. His name is Bon Jern.
But no, I mean, so I always find it really fascinating, and I really want to give people the opportunity to like what they like, you know, and that to me is what's really important. Is like what you like, but don't be a jerk about it. I was going to use a lot of unpleasant words, but don't be a jerk about it. It's like really like I don't come into your house and shit all over your table. Oh wait, sorry, too late.
One time, but you apologize.
Right,
I
so,
met the baby in the back.
yeah. So but I don't come into your house, and so I don't really like when people come onto my Facebook page or my Twitter page and like are total monsters about how they don't like something. If you don't like something, that's fine, but you don't have to be awful about it. You can just be, you know, have a discussion about it, but don't be like malicious or cruel. I can't stand that stuff.
I was telling somebody in the room today, recently a Facebook friend of mine asked me if I was going to watch this TV show that's a spin-off of a popular sitcom about nerds that people watch.
Ooh, the Sheldon thing.
Yeah. And I said I didn't think so because I don't really like Big Bang Theory. But I don't care that other people do. It's not, my TV works fine. I can watch other shows. And she started explaining to me how she's amazed that so many nerds she knows don't like this. You have to learn to laugh at yourself. And I was like, I just said I didn't like it. Like, I didn't, you're wrong about why I don't like it, but also, who cares? Why do you care? Like, why does it bother you so much?
I will say,
I just want to enjoy stuff I enjoy, and, and you should enjoy your stuff.
in trying to look at myself and the way that I think we all contribute to this problem, I will say that I think that's the one thing that I'm really bad at, right? Is when someone doesn't like a thing that I like, and there's someone that you respect and have tremendous affection for, right? It's like they've revealed some flaw. Like, you thought you understood each other on the same value system, and when they're like, oh yeah, I hate Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like, it's so important to you that you're like, no, you can't. Like, did you experience it wrong?
You didn't watch it right.
Yeah, exactly.
You must have not watched the really good season. It's the first one, so how did you not?
No, the 4th season of Buffy is the best.
Okay.
I made a list of my controversial opinions for this in case we needed it.
I
Blade Trinity is the best Blade movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
wow.
There are good parts of Batman versus Superman.
Superman 4 is one of the best Superman movies around.
It is easily in the top 10 Superman. So you can agree with that.
I mean, I also really, really love Superman 3, and I think Superman 3 has got one of the scariest scenes of any superhero movie of all time, when the woman becomes that weird cyborg thing.
I knew.
I saw that when I was 8, and it scared the crap out of me. But yeah, there are some things, like even Batman and Robin. There are parts of Batman and Robin I really enjoy. Or Batman, is that the one? Batman and Robin?
I said Batman versus Superman, but you're talking about the second Schumacher one, the Bat Nipples?
Yeah.
Bad credit card.
Yeah, Batman. Batman,
Oh yeah, that was there. Oh.
Batman in gorilla suit. I mean, come on.
I mean,
I used to see you.
I will defend Batman Forever up and down. Like, I will fight people over Batman Forever, because I think that people don't even realize how much Schumacher is doing an homage to some Westian things that really work.
Yeah, and then a lot of Western things that didn't.
Yeah, but like, there's literally, it's like, you have Chase Meridian, this insanely starry-eyed psychologist who meets Batman and goes like, well, I don't dress up as a rodent and beat people up. And Batman,
Skin tight vinyl and a whip.
And Batman, in all sincerity, goes, "Bats aren't rodents, Doctor." Just like that. That's hilarious to me. That's so Adam West. Like, that they're writing a Batman. It's like, that's why he called himself Batman, because he really cares about bats.
Right. It's just so inane. But I love it at the same time.
Yeah.
But I love that stuff. I love